Welcome to part 3 in our series of the geography of the Book of Mormon. In this episode, we'll identify the narrow neck of land in the land of the Nephites. Along the border that separated the land northward from the land southward and the land bountiful was a feature referred to as the small neck of land. The small neck of land was a line that separated the land called Desolation, which the natives called Lima, and the land of Bountiful to its south. We will be traveling to Pachamanca, which rests on the mouth of the Loren Valley next to the Pacific Ocean. What we will see is a wide valley, but within a few miles the Loren Valley becomes a narrow valley, almost a canyon, that leads through the foothills to the Andes Mountains. Along the valley walls runs a major branch of the ancient Inca highway system. Does this valley meet the requirements of being the Book of Mormon's small neck of land? The small neck of land is one of the most misunderstood features of Book of Mormon geography. As a result, there have developed over time many popular misconceptions about its nature and location. The readers of the Book of Mormon usually assume that the narrow neck of land or small neck of land defines a geographical feature, but a closer examination of its context in the Book of Mormon shows that it describes an important military fortification that must be defended to stop the Lamanites from invading. Matthew Roper notes of the narrow neck of land, quote, Mormon was speaking of a fortified line of defense, end quote. The most commonly cited clues to its nature are found in the Book of Alma. And now it was only a distance of a day and a half's journey for a Nephite on the land bountiful and the land desolation. From the east to the West Sea, and thus the land of Nephi and the land of Zarahemla were nearly surrounded by water, there being a small neck of land between the land northward and the land southward. It came to pass that the Nephites had inhabited the land of Bountiful, even from the east to the West Sea, and thus the Nephites, in their wisdom, with their guards and their armies, had hemmed in the Lamanites on the south, that thereby they should have no more possession on the north, that they might not overrun the land northward. Alma 22, 32-33. As important as what is written in this verse is what is not written. The verse does not say the small neck ran from the East Sea even to the West Sea, nor does it state that it ran between the East to the West Seas, plural that is. Rather, the small neck of land ran from the, quote, East to the West Sea. The verse is only referring to one sea, the Pacific, and a place called the East. A similar phrase would be the Union Pacific Railroad ran from the east to the Pacific Ocean. This is probably a new notion for readers of the Book of Mormon, but there are two reasons to believe that there is no sea on the east side of the small neck of land. First, the Nephites could cross the line of the small neck of land in 1.5 days. There is nowhere in the Western Hemisphere where one can start at the Pacific Ocean and walk to another separate large body of water or sea in 1.5 days. For example, the first Westerners to cross the Isthmus of Panama were Vasco de Balboa and his men in 1513. Even with the help of Indian guides, it took them 23 days to cross the notorious jungle of Panama. Second, what was being traveled by a Nephite in a day and a half was not a crossing between two bodies of water, but a line that marked the border between two lands. Quote, yea, to the land which was between the land bountiful and the land desolation. 3 Nephi 3:23. And it was the distance of a day and a half's journey for a Nephite on the line bountiful and the land desolation. Alma 22:32. It would appear that the line was a fortified borderline, a road or a defensive line, which must have been the length of no more than 40 to 50 miles. One definition Webster's dictionary provides of a line is a disposition made to cover extended military positions and presenting a front to the enemy. The Noel Webster's original 1828 American Dictionary of English Language defines a line as, quote, a trench or rampart, an extended work of fortifications. Again, it is important to remember that whenever the small neck of land is mentioned in the Book of Mormon, it is specifically in reference to military defenses needed to protect the land northward from the Lamanites in the south. Anthropologist Dr. F. Richard Houck writes in his book, Deciphering the Geography of the Book of Mormon, quote, one of the traditional assumptions of Book of Mormon scholars and casual readers alike has been to equate the narrow neck of land with an isthmus. Because this assumption has been widely accepted without careful examination, it has complicated and confused the numerous attempts to identify the setting of the Book of Mormon. For the identification of a proper isthmus is frequently the primary focus to attempt to identify the Book of Mormon geography. Careful analysis of the references in the text to this topographical feature fails to identify the presence of two seas flanking a transportation corridor. The West Sea is clearly evident in the description given in the text, but the East Sea is never specifically mentioned as being associated with the narrow corridor. Since two bodies of water flanking a narrow strip of land creates an isthmus, a narrow neck of land, as described in the Book of Mormon, does not qualify as an isthmus. The description of a transportation corridor narrowly constricted on the west by the sea and on the east flank by a possible mountain barrier does, however, qualify as a land bridge, end quote. The question remains, what was on the east end of the line? It appears to have been a highly secure mountain pass that was a strategic gateway between the land northward and the land southward. We learn in Alma 52 that the narrow entry or neck leading to the land bountiful and to the land northward was a, quote, pass, presumably a narrow mountain pass through the Andes. Noel Webster's 1828 dictionary defines a pass as a narrow passage, entrance or avenue, a narrow or difficult place of entrance or exit, as a pass between mountains, end quote. The prophet Mormon described the narrow neck of land as a passage that led to the land southward from the land northward. Mormon 2:29. Mormon also described this important military feature as a pass. Quote, I did cause my people that they should gather themselves together at the land of desolation, to a city which was in the borders, and by the narrow pass which led into the land southward. And there we did place our armies, that we might stop the armies of the Lamanites, that they might not get possession of any of our lands. Wherefore we did fortify against them with all of our forces. Mormon 3:5-6. The question begs to be asked, would the people of the Andes have used the word line or neck to define a mountain passage? The answer is yes. The most important mountain pass in the Andes is the Paso La Raya, the mountain pass that ancient times connected the capital of Cusco to the empires of the Altiplano and Lake Titicaca. Paso La Raya translates in English as cross the line. The mountain pass was on a line between the Inca's east and south corridors. It was an important trade corridor and even a more important military asset. In Spanish, the word raya has significant military connotations. Rayer means go over the line. Mantener la raya means to keep the line. keep at bay or hold at bay. Today, the narrow Laya mountain pass has become famous by passenger trains and tour buses that stop at the summit so that passengers can take photographs. The height of the pass is 14,300 feet above sea level. After taking photographs of the sign that indicates the altitude of the pass, the tourists usually turn their cameras to the mountain towering above them, the mighty Kunka mountain, with its glaciers and peak at 17,060 feet above sea level. The mountain's name, Kunka, in the native Quechua language means the neck. Think of the neck as a strangulation point on the body or a place where an army can be confined and then destroyed within a narrow mountain pass. It is no coincidence that the Andean people associated the terms line and neck with a narrow mountain pass. Rather, it is another tribute to the amazing accuracy of the prophet Joseph Smith's translation of the golden plates. In summary, what information do we have that can help us find a candidate for the small and narrow passage in South America? 1. It was a tract of land that separated the land desolation on the north and the land bountiful on the south. 2. The small neck was probably a passage or pass, which suggests a mountain passage. 3. It started in the east and ended at the West Sea. 4. From the east to the West Sea took a Nephite 1.5 days to cross. 5. It included a line, which in antiquity probably meant a defensive line. And 6. The Jaredites built a great city by the narrow neck of land, Ether 10:20. Is there a narrow pass in the Andes that was a strategic transportation corridor and defensive line that starts in the Andes Mountains and ends at the Pacific Ocean? The answer is yes, and it is not hard to identify. It is right where one would expect it. The narrow Lorraine Valley is located exactly between the Incas' land of the people of desolation, which starts in their land northward, and their southeast quarter called Contesuyo. From Lima, the Incas' land of desolation, it is only 20 miles south to where the Lorraine Valley begins at the Pacific shores, or their West Sea. Here are the reasons why the Lorraine Valley qualifies as a candidate for the narrow neck of land. 1. The border between the Incas' northwest and southwest corridors was located through the Lorraine Valley. The valley is a narrow, almost canyon-like, that starts at the base of the Andes Mountains and leads down to the Pacific Ocean. 2. Sullivan informs us that the area the Incas called the land of the people of desolation had a single high pass. In both Inca and Spanish colonial times, the main road from the south-central Andes and the capital of Cusco lay through the pass that ran from the Andes Mountains down through the Lorraine Valley to the Pacific Ocean. Thus, the Lorraine Valley was extremely important as a military asset for the Incas. Not only did the passage to the capital of Cusco run through it, but it was also the junction with the Incas' shoreline highway from the south. The Inca Coastal Road was along a 60-mile wide narrow passage that led from what appears to have been the land bountiful north along the sea to the land of desolation. This shoreline passage does not widen until it reaches the Lorraine Valley. Losing control of the Lorraine Valley would have meant that the Lamanites could attack the land northward from both the southeast and the south. Thus, it was a very important strategic military asset. 3. The narrow neck of land ran from the, quote, east to the ocean. The term east might seem vague to the reader, but to an Andean person it has a specific meaning. As noted earlier, the Inca Empire was divided along a north-south axis dividing the land into the west and to the east. Once the Inca road through the Loren Valley reached the Andes, it would have entered the eastern quarter of Antisuyo, the, quote, east, or mountain corridor. In Inca terminology, the narrow neck of land would have run from the mountains of Antisuyo, the east, to the Pacific Ocean, the West Sea. In Quechua, the word east means anti. The Antisuyo quarter literally means the east quarter. The name of the mountains Andes is derived from the word anti or east. In other words, when the Inca highway through the Loren Valley reaches the Andes Mountains, it meant that the highway reached the east. In Book of Mormon terminology, it could be stated that the narrow Loren Valley ran from the Andes, meaning east, to the Pacific Ocean, or the Sea of the West. 4. The distance from the Pacific Ocean up the Loren Valley to the Andes Mountains is approximately 45 miles, a distance a Nephite could have crossed in a day and a half. 5. The Inca Highway, from its shoreline mouth up the Loren Valley to the Andes, was fortified. The Spanish chronicler Zeza describes this section of the highway as being some 15 feet wide, protected by strong walls roughly the height of a man. A wall the height of a man, a wall that ran the entire length of the Loren Valley from the shorelines up to the Andes, was undoubtedly a line, a defensive line, against invading armies from the south. 6. The Loren Valley starts on the west as a narrow valley. However, on its east end, it is a very narrow passage or gorge through the mountains. Coble describes just how narrow the pass was on the road up the valley. Quote, if it passed through hillsides with cliffs and slabs of rock, a narrow path only wide enough for one person leading a llama or sheep was dug in the boulders itself. The final criteria for any candidate for the narrow neck of land or pass was that it was near a great Jaredite city. The city was constructed near the end of the Jaredite era, Ether 1020. Just 2 miles north of the Loren Valley and along the seashore is Huaca Villa Salvador, the site of an excavation of an ancient city. The ruins date to the end of the early Horizon period, 1000 BC to 250 BC, placing it firmly within the context of the late Jaredites. The ceramics found at the site show that their designs were influenced from the northern Peru coastline civilizations. This would be consistent with the Jaredites at Caral having had a satellite city in the important Loren Valley. In conclusion, using the Book of Mormon criteria for the narrow or small neck of land, we see that there was an excellent match for it in the ancient Andes. As you can see, the geography described in the Book of Mormon is in perfect harmony with the geography of Western South America, starting with Joseph Smith's teachings that Lehi landed in Chile, a land that was divided in 4 quarters with a north and south axis, a land with 4 seas, a land with exceedingly high mountains, a land with a wilderness, a land that was called Desolation, a land with a natural harbor, a river Sidon, and a narrow neck of land. Discover more about the Book of Mormon by subscribing to this channel, or you can visit our website, christinperu.com. That's one word, Christ in Peru, where you can learn about our books and also our tours to Peru. Thank you.